The gaming market seems to be heading to a concerning place, a big bubble getting ready to burst. Sorry Tom, I'm sure you poured your heart and soul into this game, but it didn't generate $300 million in pre-orders, so I'm afraid we're gonna have to send you to the unemployment line. Maybe if you worked harder on the 750th Looter Shooter live service game of the year, it would be a success and you wouldn't be out of a job. This has really taken a root now in the 9th generation of consoles. That's why the PS5 has been out for 4 years and has like 3 exclusives. But it really started to rear its head in the 8th generation. I mean, we can blame all sorts of things. Loot boxes, Fortnite, even Clash of Clans for popularizing microtransactions, or Grand Theft Auto Online for showing the industry this was a viable tactic for the console gaming market. Or, if you want to really go back, we can blame the Skyrim Horse Armor DLC. Man, times used to be so much simpler. Xbox and PlayStation fans were just at each other's throats, and you could buy a game for $60 that worked on day one without a massive patch, and it was just a game. Games used to just be games, and pre-order bonuses used to be fun add-ons or collectibles, not horrible skins you could buy day one for $2. When I was a kid, I pre-ordered LEGO Star Wars 2. It had a great pre-order bonus, a picture of the GameStop employee's rectal cavity. He was real excited to give it to me. He said I couldn't tell nobody, not even my parents. Nice guy. He was arrested a week later for possession of illicit material.
Those feds are a bunch of hacks.
Please sign this petition to free Mr. Nehemiah.
The identity of the game industry has shifted over the years, and that's true of every long-lasting market. You have to change with the trends. As new technology becomes available, you have to adapt to it, but it's important to have an identity. Nintendo's never lost sight of its root as a classic games developer. Even as their games evolve over the years, they still feel like they're made by the same people that made the original Mario and Zelda titles. PlayStation has come a long way. Some of the console-defining titles of the PS1 were Metal Gear Solid and Resident Evil, games that drew heavily from Western filmmaking. Now their games feel like big cinematic experiences. Uncharted, The Last of Us, Spider-Man, God of War. But what is Xbox's identity? Let's look at what they got. They got a Redfall, Indiana Jones, Starfield, and State of Decay. What do any of these games have in common? What does this say about Xbox as a brand? What is an Xbox game? Well, Xbox used to have a brand, and that brand defined the gaming scene for 2 generations. But what happened to it? Where did it all go? So, Xbox came into the race pretty late. Nintendo had been pumping out consoles since like World War II, and Sony's PlayStation had been a pretty big hit the generation before, so there was a lot riding on this. See, the PlayStation 2 and the GameCube were both made by Japanese companies, but it was time for America to start hanging dong like we always do. In the end, the PlayStation 2 didn't just win the generation, it took both of the systems out back, bent them over, and inserted objects up their anuses. Like, the last time a race ended in a landslide this badly was the Reagan and Mondale presidential election in 1984. Except this time the end result wasn't crack being sent to the hood, it was just good games being sent to everybody.
I'm here for the PlayStation 2. The best entertainment system to hit the world.
So, I guess it's just a question of what you'd rather get, delicious meth or Ratchet and Clank. Even though it may not have won, the Xbox left a mark on the generation for a number of reasons. Number 1, how can anyone forget the original Xbox? Well, the PS2 and GameCube looked like relatively normal. The Xbox looked like the hyperdrive of some kind of evil spaceship. It was also twice the size of the other consoles and it had giant monster controllers that had no business being that big. And, in case it wasn't American enough, they had literal triggers on the back. The Xbox was designed to intimidate. Look at the startup animation. It looks like it's about to explode and take out your entire neighborhood. Number 2. Everyone else was just making consoles and selling them to consumers to play games, but Microsoft was a computer company, so they just said fuck it and stuck a PC in a box. This meant better GPU, better CPU, and like twice as much RAM. But these are just improvements on what their competitors were doing. The Xbox really innovated with internal storage, meaning there were never any memory cards to this thing. This was a massive and currently underappreciated leap in technology. This will become industry standard next generation, and sure, you can sit here and argue with me that the PS3 would have had internal storage next gen anyways. The women in my basement like to argue that I need to let them go, so I like to engage in spirited debate. But I think it's fair to see that the Wii would not have. I could just picture it shipping out with fucking GameCube memory cards or something like that. The Wii didn't even have HDMI until the next gen, so they're like always a generation behind on everything. Number 3. While it wasn't the first online console service, it was the one that changed the culture of gaming. At the time, the concept of adding friends and voice chat and building your own little friend group and community was considered innovative. If you had an Xbox, you used Xbox Live. This wasn't common at the time. You didn't always use your online for your PS2, even if it might have been available to some degree.
Dude, who are you talking to? Are we gonna play or what?
Patience, Grasshopper. One must learn before one can dominate.
Forget that, let's play!
So this helped form a very active and identifiable online community around games like Halo and Call of Duty. And this ain't like 9th gen online where you gotta sign an agreement not to call nobody no slurs on Black Ops 6. You are robbing children of formative experiences. I remember playing Modern Warfare 1 at 2 in the morning and listening as a man in his mid-20s explain how he enjoys watching a woman get it from a donkey and try to beg anyone else in the online server to be like, hey, yeah, I get that too. He's saying, I can't be the only one. Someone else in here has to Okay, listen up. We have to talk one-on-one. I have a very important message for you. You can't see them, but behind this green screen right here, there's like 50 Chinese sweatshop workers. They're working very hard to make sure this video gets edited and cut together properly. They're just slaving away back there. They're great. But I have really bad news. Something bad will probably happen to them if you don't subscribe right now. Not me. I'm not going to do anything to them. Completely unrelated. Anything could happen. There could be a tornado. We have really horrible like fire prevention in the warehouse here. Anything could happen to them. The only way that can be guaranteed prevented is if you subscribe to the channel right now, okay? Well, they're putting a lot of work back there, and they really appreciate it. It gets their hopes up. They get extra food, an extra grain of rice for every subscription we get. We're currently at 130 grains of rice per employee, so keep up the great work, because they are, and you need to subscribe, okay? All right, goodbye. Back to this video. Please enjoy. Number 4. The games. Everybody knows without Halo, the Xbox may have been dead in the water, because ultimately that's why people buy consoles. Even if your friend John says that he only cares about the specs and the graphics, John's a fucking liar. How many frames per second does your PS2 run Blood Gulch on Halo? What resolution does Spider-Man get on your Xbox One? None. But the Xbox was defined by a lot more than just Halo. Their games were darker, edgier. Jade Empire, Elder Scrolls Morrowind, Fable, Knights of the Old Republic, Ninja Gaiden Black. And I know Morrowind was on PC, but it wasn't on any other consoles. I don't want any PC people in my comments. I fucking hate PC. For every PC fan, I'm throwing 1 can of Gamer Supps in the ocean. Use code Jones for negative 25% off your order at gamersupps.com. What do all those games have in common? They all took really nerdy genres and made them seem cool to the general populace. You're either out in space or in some weird fantasy world, and in almost all these games you get to play out some variation of the Chosen One story. Master Chief is the key to this massive intergalactic war. Jade Empire, you're this ancient monk with a mysterious power. What sets Xbox apart from the GameCube and PS2 is that it didn't seem to have any interest in appealing to a family-friendly audience. Xbox's mascot wasn't Mario or Crash Bandicoot or Spyro or any of the fucking cartoon cute character. It was a badass motherfucker in a suit of armor with a gun. Even their Star Wars games were more mature. But it's clear that Sony saw Microsoft and what they were doing and decided to make changes to try and compete with them directly. The PS3 had a much more robust online service, and they basically completely abandoned the family-friendly market and got rid of the fucking memory cards. And before you try to tell me mature games existed before, I know. The 7th gen saw its fair share of adult titles. This was the golden era of Rockstar. They were constantly experimenting and adding new things. They gave us games like Manhunt, Max Payne, even Bully, which I know is rated T, but that game is, just as, if not more controversial than any other Rockstar game. The 7th gen was just kind of a major shift. Gaming had always been kind of seen as a kid thing, like comic books, but once the 7th gen rolled around, that idea was dead and buried. PlayStation's new catalog of games looked noticeably darker. Resistance, Heavy Rain, Demon's Souls, Infamous, Last of Us, even Haze was directly marketed as Sony's Halo killer. So we already established that the PS2 absolutely annihilated the original Xbox, but there was something kind of admirable about Microsoft stepping into the ring for another go at it. It's kind of like in this movie you might have heard of. It's called Rocky. The bad guy, Apollo Creed, just beats his ass, but Rocky stuck it out to the end of the match and people respected him for it. Coming back for a second time was a ballsy move, and Microsoft's hoping they get a Rocky 2 ending and finally take the crown. Well, did they? Ultimately, the result of the PS3 and 360 race is a lot more gray than people like to pretend it is. Sony fans will point to the fact that the PS3 officially sold more units than the 360 and pretend that settles it, but this is called subterfuge, telling the truth but leaving out important details to paint a narrative. Like the old man who took me to court last month, he told the judge I bit off part of his nose and proceeded to violently beat him. This is true, but he's leaving out the part where he told me he liked Rebel Moon. What was I supposed to do? He left me with no choice. He clearly was not fit to be left walking the streets with us. The truth is that the PlayStation 3 sold 3 million more copies than the 360, and it took them about 6 years to do it. It's also ignoring the massive lead in popularity they had after the last console generation. In the end, I think they both won in different areas. The 360 was the console people needed at the start of the generation, but this is like one of them baton races. The PS4 just finished stronger and did a better job of handing things off to the PS4. This shift in focus is what led to Xbox's downfall. Sony was completely out of Nintendo's playground, leaving them to run their part of the market unopposed, but now Sony and Microsoft were directly competing for the exact same share of the market. And like I said earlier, the 360 did dominate at first. The PS3's first big misstep was the pricing. This thing was ridiculously more expensive. Microsoft console was more affordable and more accessible, not just to consumers, but to developers. The PS3 was infamous for being extremely difficult to work with, leading to early titles like Infamous looking like PS2 games, but sunset titles like Last of Us basically looking like PS4 games. Xbox decided to double down on their previously established brand, more Halo, and now Gears of War, masculine shooters with a strong online presence that the male demographic between the ages of 16 and 28 could build personal communities on. Their exclusives also doubled down on this branding: Fable 2 and 3, the Mass Effect trilogy before they would make it available on the PS3, Crackdown and Crackdown 2, Alan Wake, Lost Odyssey, Left 4 Dead 1 and 2. Once again, Xbox was largely taking genres and stories that might seem nerdy and marketing them to the American dude bro. Like Mass Effect on its face might seem like some stupid shit for nerds because you have to maintain relationships with a bunch of weird aliens and bang blue women with tentacle heads, and that's just Star Trek, which is like the nerdiest thing ever, but Xbox made it badass and cool. There are two types of gamers: those who are old enough to have survived getting berated in Modern Warfare 2 lobbies, and those who are not. This is a baptism by fire, and it's something that can never be replicated. These two groups were cut from entirely different cloths, and they will never respect each other. You may think this was a universal experience, and to a degree it was. Yeah, like the PS3 had in-game chat, but the 360 was once again ahead of the market with important features like party chat and voice messages.
I own you, little you can't play this game, man. Get out of the tank, and then let's see who wins. I'm like #1 in support, so I'll kill you. Yeah, get out the tank next time, and then let's see who will win, you little.
This was a breeding ground for the most uniquely toxic interactions on the internet. Any Xbox Live user could click on your account and send you a direct audio message filled with the most vile, hateful personal attacks under the sun. And this was just the Thunderdome. It was just the two of you. No one could intervene and save you. Not even God wanted to know what went down in an Xbox Live party chat. Have a bad round in Modern Warfare, and the next thing you know, XXX Booty Clapper 420 is sending you a 60-second voice message describing everything he's going to do to every member of your family and their holes, ending it with a readout of your exact coordinates and at least 50 slurs. And this toxicity is how a lot of people remember this era, and pretty much everybody seems to look back on it fondly. It was the Wild West. The stuffed suits at Microsoft couldn't even fathom something like the Danny G voice chat, so there was no chance of them taking any measures to prevent it. If you want to see a more in-depth breakdown on the depravity of Xbox Live, you can watch this video here by the Act Man. Okay. Which one of you didn't subscribe? Okay, listen, something bad happened back there. I don't even know what this is. I don't know where this freaking came from. I was just holding that for a friend. That had nothing to do with me, okay? But something bad happened is because you didn't subscribe. You're the only one. Everyone else subscribed, man. What the fuck is wrong with you? God damn it. So, if you want to prevent future horrible things from happening to the sweatshop workers, just make sure to subscribe, okay? I'm going to leave you now. Enjoy the rest of this thing. So, for most of the generation, the 360 was on top, and it was by far the better seller here in the US overall. But now it was time for the next gen. This would be the first generation Microsoft entered not as the very, very clear underdog, and a lot of people were wondering how they would handle it. Microsoft just immediately made the same mistake Sony made last generation. They let their greed and success force them into very stupid business decisions.
TV. Xbox is about to become the next water cooler. Sports. Television.
While basically all of these features were removed before launch, like a required internet connection and DRM tying games directly to your account, the damage was already done. They stumbled out of the gate, but unlike Sony, who was in for the long haul, they kind of just threw in the towel. Sony had a few studios under their belt that created flagship franchises for them. Naughty Dog and Uncharted, Sucker Punch and Infamous, Guerrilla Games and Killzone, and then when they were done with those series, they moved on to make new franchise exclusives for the PS4. The Last of Us, Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon. Bungie and Epic Games made the two franchises that represented Xbox as a whole. And what did they do when they were done with Halo and Gears of War? Destiny and Destiny 2 and Fortnite. Live service, multi-platform games. And then BioWare was never officially a Microsoft studio, but they built their name off of Xbox exclusives. But they kind of just slipped away. Now, I don't know if this was because Microsoft didn't want to hold on to them, but either way, all of these big studios that helped them in their war were just abandoning ship. It's like if halfway through Lord of the Rings, Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli were just like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. This war's looking a little difficult. Sauron's kind of scary. I think I'm just going to go home. See you guys later. We'll chill after. Talk to you guys when this is all over. Goodbye. And finally is the naming problem. The first Xbox was going to be called the Direct Xbox, but the people at Microsoft realized that this was a horrible name, so they shortened it to Xbox. And Xbox 360 was a great name, but we all started calling the first Xbox the Xbox One because that just made sense. So for some fucking reason, they decided to call the third console the Xbox One, which is just confusing and makes no sense at all. Now they released the Xbox Series X, which is just a fucking mouthful. Xbox has been leaning into this weird approach of pretending they're completely pro-consumer by putting everything on Game Pass and Game Pass PC and making everything third-party, and their brain-dead fans are eating this up. They think Phil Spencer genuinely loves them and would wrap them in his own clothes if they were cold. No, they lost the console race and are trying a path of least resistance empathy play to get fan approval, thinking that this will translate to more subscriptions and more money for them. Get off your ass and make a game, Phil, you fucking stupid asshole. The Xbox One had a few good exclusives like Sunset Overdrive and the State of Decay games, which I really like, but these weren't exactly system sellers and they lacked a cohesive brand. You may be wondering about the newer Halo or Gears of War games. After all, they are still receiving new entries. Everyone knows these two have lost their way ever since their original developers left, though. 343 hasn't made a single satisfactory Halo decision since they took over, and Gears is even worse. At least people still talk about Halo. At least people were excited for Halo Infinite. No one was excited for Gears of War 5. It's just like if Uncharted moved on, and like Naughty Dog stopped making Uncharted games and they moved on, and some other developer just got to keep making unlikable, unpopular Uncharted games, and Sony just kept pumping them out because of the brand recognition. No one would like that and would damage the console's reputation. So this is Xbox now, a sterile little box that looks like a boring Wi-Fi router, a neutered online service, and no games at all. Just a bland corporate system with no personality or any reasons to buy it. Now the Japanese run the market, and this isn't what our ancestors died on Omaha Beach for. But can Microsoft turn things around with a new console? Honestly, I don't think so. The industry isn't what it used to be. Sure, we'll get games that break the trends a bit here and there, like Baldur's Gate or Alan Wake 2, but these are both indie developers. Microsoft is never going to sign off on any of the decisions necessary to make a game like that. And that's what they need. Games are what it's going to sell these consoles. And if all they're going to be willing to do is pumping out live service, AAA, big budget, 5-year development time, make it or break it games over and over and over again and nothing else, the console just can't thrive. And I mean, why would they want to when the live service model has been so lucrative? I wouldn't be surprised if the next generation is their last outing. I know some people say they might just call it entirely with the Series X, but who really knows? At least I can boot up my 360 and play Gears of War and pretend it's still 2008.